Well, surprise, surprise, I picked an Old Testament passage. Those of you who know me well will have expected that. Those of you who don't know me well, I love the Old Testament. And you need to realise that when Jesus preached, he preached from the Old Testament pretty much the way that Montez preaches from the New Testament. You know, when he said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, that's straight from Deuteronomy. It's a prayer or a command that every good Jew says every Sabbath. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And then he went on to say, you shall love your neighbour as yourself. That comes straight from Leviticus. Chapter 19, verse 18. And it says, you know, love your neighbour. And there are lots in there about doing things which help the poor. Like, don't take all the grapes from your vineyard. Don't take all the grain from your field. Leave bits in the corner. Leave the gleanings, the grain that's dropped on the ground, for the poor and the widow and the foreigner. Anyone is allowed to come in, pick them up, and they could have enough to live on. My personal favourite is Proverbs 25. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. Paul quotes this. For in doing this, you will heap burning coals upon his head. I love that. But unfortunately, it sort of means that if you treat him like this, his conscience may prick him a little bit, or her conscience may prick him a little bit. So, God's promise to Abraham. What did God promise Abraham? He promised, I will make of you a great nation. And there was a sort of condition on that promise. And through you there will be a blessing to all nations, not just to Israel, but all nations. Now, some Christians will tell you, well, that's fulfilled in Jesus. And I can't disagree with that, but it's not the whole story, I believe. The Jews, as God's chosen people, were called upon to be a blessing to the whole world. Now, ask any Palestinian, are they a blessing to them? And the answer is no. They not only failed to recognise the Messiah when he came, they're failing to fulfil that primary command to Abraham. But Paul tells us we are the descendants of Abraham, and we have the opportunity to fulfil that part of the promise. Now, of course, most of us aren't real descendants of Abraham. If we trace our family back, we probably don't get to Abraham. Don't know, I've never tried, I'm not very interested in that. I have a brother had a brother who was very into that, and he tried, but I don't think he got that far back. So, we are called upon to be a blessing to all the nations. Wow. I can't do that, can you? Who here can be a blessing to all the nations? No, it's a big ask. But we can be a blessing to those we come in contact with, to all those we meet. It's fairly easy, not so easy for me because I'm really a loner. I'm the guy who, my best friend's 21st birthday party, my wife used to tell the story. I was sitting in a corner reading a book. Right? I don't do society very well, but it's not that difficult if you make the effort. You know, if I'm served by someone at a checkout and they have a name tag on, call them by name. It's easy. If you pass someone on the street, give them a smile. It's easy. And so we are blessed in our lives by many people. And there are many people I could go through in my life that have been a major blessing to me, that have helped to make me, let's not blame them for all of the person I am, but let's blame them for the good bits, okay? There are a few good bits, you have to look hard, but there are good bits. I want to tell you about one. His name was Arthur, but we all called him Skip because he was an old scoutmaster. When I say old, he would have been in his 60s when I first met him. He was gassed at Ypres in France in the First World War. He had scars all over his body from that, and every winter he would get the most terrible cold flu cough thing because it had got into his lungs, and he'd be laid up for a couple of weeks. He had a daughter. She was in her 20s, I think, when I met them. When she was 4, she fell and hit her head on a post. The doctor said, oh no damage, but from then on she never spoke. So, deaf daughter. His wife had dementia at least from when I knew him. You know, she would wander around the house looking lost, and wander in the garden looking lost, and thinking, what am I doing? So he had to do all the housework as well as having a job. As well, he taught Sunday school, not Sunday school, religious instruction, which we had in schools back then. He was my RI teacher in grades 6 and 7, I think, and also my first couple of years at high school. And he, because of his scoutmaster background, I guess, was really good at telling stories to kids and bringing the gospel home to them. Most people who went into RI were ministers and hated it because the kids paid no attention to them. He knew the secret of talking to kids. Because his daughter was deaf, well, he learnt to fingerspell, he learnt Braille. She couldn't read Braille, but he was transcribing books into Braille for blind people. Yeah, you'd think he had enough on his plate. But he decided that, well, he saw something in me that I didn't see, and so he asked me to have a Saturday morning job with him. He was a draftsman, architectural draftsman and quantity surveyor. So he taught me architectural drawing, he taught me how to measure up all the bits of wood that go into a roof of a house, back in the day when it was done like that, and became my friend, and introduced me back into the Anglican Church, had me confirmed, and so he was a real blessing to me. And, I've lost the page here. And people who came into his office, yes, I do have notes. People who came into his office came to see him about work, but he was counselling them too. He was asking them questions about their personal life and getting them to share their problems with them. So he was a great blessing to me. And it's fairly easy to be a blessing. When you meet a person, you can ask yourself, what could I do that would be a blessing to this person? Sometimes it's a smile, sometimes it's a touch. Call them by name, offer prayer. You wouldn't believe the number of people that I've come across who have problems that make mine seem insignificant. And I can offer them the prayer chain, and they are grateful and they are blessed by that. So lots of things. And you could volunteer for something, especially something that involves people, Talk to Clive about helping with breakfast at the school. Talk to Jane about helping in the op shop. Go to a local aged care home. There are people in there that don't get a visitor from one week to the next. And just by going in there and saying hello to someone, now you may think, like I do, look, I'm not a conversationalist. I wouldn't know how to start a conversation with someone like that. All you've got to do is say, "G'day, how are you? Tell me about your life." And you'll have trouble stopping them. I tell you, they are in many, many cases, and the carers will know who you should be talking to. So, it's something you can do. Sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, up at Bene, I thought, what can I do here? I know, because many of the people don't speak English, they only speak Italian. What could I do? I could learn Italian, so I can say hello to them and have a chat with them. Well, 8 months later, I don't know enough Italian to have a conversation. I do an hour every morning, okay? I've done an hour before I came here this morning. Oh, some of it's easy, some of it's hard, some of it's confusing. All languages are confusing. But then what do I discover? No, this one doesn't actually speak Italian. She speaks Calabresian, and never the twain shall meet. And this one speaks another dialect. Hardly anyone of them speaks Italian, because they didn't come from parts of Italy, mostly, where Italian is the main language. Right? It's probably changed over there, and some of these local dialects are maybe dying out. So it doesn't always work, but it's worth a try. And you may, as I did, discover parts of your personality, parts of yourself that you didn't know existed. In my case, parts of me that I would have sworn never existed. And you will feel good about yourself. Now, this is a feeling that selfish people never get. If you help someone and you can see the look in their face, you have your reward. I know you'll get your reward in heaven, but you have your reward right there, because you will feel so good that you've been able to do something for this person. And remember, it's God who called you to be a blessing to these people. Most of these things cost you absolutely nothing, except a little bit of thought, a little bit of time and effort. But even if it costs a few dollars, it's money well spent. The feeling is worth millions, let me tell you. But every good sermon should have 3 points, right? Now, you hoped that I was going to stop at 1, but bad luck, here comes the second one. If you're going to be a blessing to others, there's a reciprocal bit of this. You have to allow others to be a blessing to you. This is definitely something I'm not good at. Someone says, "How are you?" I say, "I'm fine. Can I do something to help you?" "No, I'm okay. I can manage." In my mind, I'm the one who helps other people, not the one that other people help. But if you're going to be a blessing to someone, they have to allow it, okay? You don't impose blessings on people. You offer them. And if they're offered back, be gracious. people feel bad if you do a lot for them and they can't do anything in return. Don't they? If someone does a lot for you, don't you feel sort of... Now, there are some people who are just takers, you know. They expect people to do a lot for them, and they don't offer much in return. And there, don't stop being a blessing, because you've been commanded to by God. But you do need to set some boundaries, okay? Because you're not helping them if they become dependent on you. God has blessed you. Share the blessing. And oh dear, I've missed a point. Part 2. Yes, no, I've not missed a point. Share the blessing and be blessed, because it is what God has asked you to do. Musicians, please.